Time to abandon ship.
Oh no!
Here we go.
Can I persuade you to join us for a drink? It's a tradition.
Here.
Jar Jar, homie, my main man, quickly. Before the Separatists attack, get into the escape pod.
Hey! This is escape, then we're the pod. Jesus!
Welcome back to Star Wars Escape Pod. I'm your host, Josh, and we're rolling back the clock today to December 1980. And we're going to be taking a look at Fantastic Films Collector's Edition number 20, which is an old magazine with a headline on it called Clone Wars Explained. This is someone's speculation in 1980. It's coming up with theories about what the Clone Wars was and what Episode 6 is going to be like and all this and that. And a friend of mine gave me this magazine when he was digging through some old Star Wars things in the garage. So we're going to take a look at that with Bryce and Blake in the Escape Pod. So stay tuned.
Another happy landing.
All right, boys, welcome back.
Hey, glad to be back.
Good to have you guys back, and especially for this this very, very special episode. I mean, like I was kind of blown away when this article surfaced, because it kind of made me think in a way that I haven't really been able to before. Like a lot of us, the three of us were all born after the original trilogy was a thing. And so like to have that mindset of, especially even when this article was written in 1980, they had 2 Star Wars films and that was it. And so it's kind of crazy to think like, oh yeah, what was speculation like on like what this Clone Wars was and what Revenge of the Jedi was going to be like. But
that's a good point. I wonder, when did they release Splinter of the Mind's Eye?
That was, I think, around the same time, actually. That was the first EU book. Let me just look this up.
That's why I'm wondering if that would have had a massive effect on everyone's opinion.
1978.
Like expanded universe stuff and you know what's to come. Early. Okay, so it actually was before Empire Strikes Back then.
Yep. Yes. Yeah.
So people would have actually read that and used that to speculate what's to come, which is actually really crazy to think about.
Yeah. That's a good point, actually. And it's actually, have either of you read that book?
I kind of glanced at it and I read through the wiki like years ago, but I haven't actually read the novel.
I think I'm the same thing. Just
right. Yeah. Well, I figured we would just kind of go through this magazine here. I'll read out a section or show you a photo with like the title caption beneath it, all that stuff.
We're just going to podcast. You're going to have to explain the imagery.
Yes. Yeah. And we're just going to make fun of this thing. We're just going to have a good time breaking this down. We'll see what this guy, how close he is to what we got. And, just how out there some of these theories are, because these are all theories from a guy in 1980. So none of this is fact. Okay. So if you're new to Star Wars, this is not for you. Go watch the original trilogy first. Yeah.
Oh man, some poor fan turns on this episode the first time any Star Wars content is just so let down by what's to come.
Don't get your hopes up.
I think I'm ready to delve into some more intense Star Wars lore. Boom. Ready.
Yeah, exactly, man. It's some of this stuff is pretty out there. I've already pre-read it, but you know what? Let's just start with the cover. All right, so Empire Strikes Back came out. Let's just all put ourselves in the mindset of like 1980. Okay, it's Christmas time, 1980. Empire Strikes Back came out 6 months ago.
Yeah, I got my mullet. I have some really short denim jeans on.
Yeah, dude. Okay, I got my plaid sweater on. some of those big shades. I got the George Lucas haircut going on. Some overalls.
I'm
White
rocking
sneakers.
it.
White sneakers.
I got a big T-shirt that's way too boxy and no one should actually wear. Has a terrible cut. It doesn't reveal anything. And it goes with my half baggy jeans with the knees missing and my hair that goes to my shoulders. But it's very flat.
All right, so we pick up this magazine at the local drug mart or whatever, and we see special anniversary issue printed on the top corner and a big blue headline called Clone Wars Explained, and we all kind of recall that line that Ben Kenobi says to Luke about the Clone Wars. Luke says to Ben Kenobi, "You fought in the Clone Wars," and Ben goes on to, "Oh yes, I was a Jedi Knight, was the same as your father," and all that stuff. So we take a closer look at the cover, and there's a picture of Boba Fett, very classic picture of him zoomed in on the bridge of the Star Destroyer, and it says, "Bounty Hunter may reveal true identity in Wars sequel." See story on page 24.
Actually, what is quite interesting is, I don't know if this is coincidence or this guy actually already was starting to know the future, but is talking about revealing the Clone Wars, and it's Boba Fett. Just pointing that out.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And he's not too far off, but I think he's got some theories as to the fact that maybe Boba Fett has a little more to do with this story. And I guess we'll get into that in a bit because
I wonder if George read this magazine and that gave him the idea for the prequels.
it makes you wonder, hey? Dark Lord.
That's a good idea.
Here's another picture of Luke and Vader fighting on Bespin, and the caption reads, "Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader duel with lightsabers," and the little headline next to that says, "Dark Lord deceives son with half-truth revelation. Lord Vader in an Imperial subspace broadcast revealed today that he informed Rebel leader Luke Skywalker as to his progeny. A dumbfounded Skywalker lost his head, figuratively, and hand, literally, when he learned that he may well be third in line for the monarchy."
That is the nerdiest, geekiest sentence I've ever heard.
I was going to say, it just sounds like a tabloid. It's like you're
absolutely.
following it's like, who's new? It's like,
Oh my goodness.
So I'm gonna flip inside. Let's flip inside the magazine here. Try and find that article. Look, join the official Star Wars fan club. Get
You should
involved and become.
send in the letter.
Oh man, there's still the cutaway still here.
Send it in.
Look at that. Send to official Star Wars fan club, P.O. Box 8905, Department SD, which Universal City, California 91608. Everybody, send in your slips. You can.
Josh, you should put it out on a tweet so all of your fans can print it out and mail it in.
Check this out. Allow 4 to 6 weeks for delivery of the membership kit.
Wow.
Whereas today, of course, it would be one day
all the way
delivery.
across the galaxy, man.
Totally. That's a good point, actually. All right, so what do we get?
That's about right for light speed.
Star Wars pencil, little membership card. Well, look at that. A patch, some photographs, 8x11, perfect for framing on your wall. For that very small and building collection that'll keep growing for 40 years. Guarantee, if for any reason you are not satisfied with your membership of the official Star Wars fan club, you may return all materials received for a full refund, Lucasfilm Limited. So we get that.
Is that
all right.
still their address, or have they moved since then? Like, when did they move to Presidio?
Oh, I have no idea. I got to rewatch all those documentaries now again. I'm not entirely sure.
It'd be funny if you mailed that and just went to like some random guy's house.
Right.
What is this crap?
Yeah, what's funny about some of the promotional material for Empire Strikes Back? Like I'm taking a good look at this picture of the patch. I don't know if you can see that on the camera, but
oh wow, it looks exactly like the anime version of Darth Vader that we got in Rebels.
So that plus, I mean, do you see the flames beneath it? This is a black and white photograph, but you see the flames beneath it. This reminds me of the promotional material for Revenge of the Sith. Like a lot of the Revenge of the Sith stuff had Vader's helmet with the flames underneath.
Yeah, I remember that from the Lego box.
Yeah, there's the logo on like all that stuff for a long time.
Yeah. So some recycled promotional inspiration there, I guess, for the later films that came out. But yeah, let's find this article. Okay, I got the article out. We got a big printout colored sheet with Vader on it and all this DNA garble on it, and it says Clone Wars, and there's a DNA strip on the picture there.
Look at that strand.
It's like more of
crazy.
like when you think of I know when we think of clones, we don't think of like science fiction, right? But like when you I feel like especially going into the 20th century, cloning was like something kind of real. Like, and it had, you're
right.
in the 90s and people are like cloning sheep and shit.
The sheep, yeah.
Yeah,
That's a good point. Before that, it would have been, like crazy sci-fi fantasy stuff.
Yeah, so people are kind of like, I think that's why there's all that like DNA stuff, and like it's like, oh yeah, this is gonna have a lot more to do with science.
right. Yeah, and I mean, George Lucas's last science fiction-y film was THX 1138, which, I mean, that was pretty out there. I don't know if you guys have seen that, but it was, honestly, I love George Lucas. I love the man. I love everything he does except THX 1138. I sat down on my couch and it was a struggle, dude. Like, I was like, this is the director's cut. So this is like the extra, like the full version, like the George Lucas, like, I don't know why they cut 10 minutes out of the movie. It didn't need to happen, So this is the full edition, and it was tough. I was like, this is hard.
Is just because it's aged? Like, is it like watching the original Planet of the Apes, like that kind of vibe?
Yeah, like it's just.
Well, no,
aged.
it's every like film or like art film student, that gets out of school, they got to make their like fancy arty film. It's like. It's that exactly. It's like highbrow, right?
Yes. Yeah. It's very abstract in the sense that, very stylized, a lot of that stuff. So this is also kind of the director's cut. It's like kind of like what George did with the special edition. Some of the effects have been replaced or I guess enhanced. So, it slightly modernizes some pieces of it, but the general story was very, very science fiction-y. Like, the society is basically living underground. So you don't see the sky until the last, like, spoiler here, the last like 10 seconds of the movie. But everyone lives underground and everyone's wearing like white suits and everyone's like cog in this giant civilization where everyone has a job to do and all that stuff.
Yeah, it's all dystopian.
It's all very dystopian. Yeah, and it's about this guy who
like
I guess
right
falls in love with
I see the sky to the last 10 seconds.
who falls in love with a woman, and I think it's something like that, and then they decide to kind of escape from this
island,
this society. So
it
anyway,
sounds like The Island with Ewan McGregor. They ripped it off.
No,
actually, I haven't seen that.
Actually, Obi-Wan.
It's a crossover. That was Obi-Wan the whole time. It was his prequel.
That's what we're getting from Kenobi. Okay, so we got the headline on the next page here. Speculation concerning the future history of the continuing Star Wars saga. The Empire Strikes Back is a spectacular box office success, guaranteeing the return of Luke and the rest of the Star Wars gang in Episode 6, Revenge of the Jedi. The bad news in that Jedi won't appear at your local theater for another 3 years. No one has the slightest doubt that Luke will defeat Darth Vader at exactly 1 hour and 56 minutes into that 2-hour movie, but how exactly will he do it? And the answer to all that important questions of the identity of Luke's real father are mysteries that lie in a 12-page outline in George Lucas's desk drawer. But there are clues sprinkled through the first 2 movies and the Star Wars novels, combined with various interviews of George Lucas has given and a little imagination. They might give us a pretty good idea of what could happen in the next episode of The Adventures of Luke Skywalker. Let us indulge in some purely deductive speculation. So already, he's brought up the books, and he's brought up the fact that Revenge of the Jedi is the confirmed title for episode 6.
They changed it.
And yes. And he's also referred to it as episode 6 because at this point in time, episode 4 has now been officially labeled, named as episode 4. Yeah. So Empire Strikes Back hit theaters as episode 5. It didn't just hit theaters
that would have
as
confused
Empire
so
Strikes
many
Back.
people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, what? Where did the other like 3 movies come out?
I missed 3 of them.
Yeah, I think a lot of people were confused, but
Yeah. You know
it
what's
didn't
funny?
stop people from going to the theater.
I kind of got some deja vu as you're reading through there because it sounded like you could have been describing Ray going into finding out Ray's parents.
Yeah, well, that's where I think a lot of that inspiration came for the sequels. It's just a lot of recycled nostalgia.
Yeah, I think Disney was quite aware of that.
Yeah, I'm aware of it too. Like any good detective novel, we should start with the background first. George Lucas signed a 2-picture contract with United Artists sometime around 1970. The first picture was to be American Graffiti, and the second, a space fantasy film. When UA decided not to do Graffiti, he took the picture to Universal Studios. Before it was released and became a huge success, UA also backed out of its option to Star Wars. Lucas took the idea to 20th Century Fox and was paid $10,000 to write the script. Writing that script took him 2 years. He started with a storyline and soon realized it was too long for a single picture. He cut it in half and then divided each half into 3 episodes. What we first saw as Star Wars has been retitled Episode 4, A New Hope. Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back, and Episode 6, Revenge of the Jedi, will complete the second trilogy. Then Lucas will go back to film Episode 1. This is important because Jedi must be viewed as the climax of the entire saga, involving characters from the first half that we haven't met yet. Most notably the pilot Skywalker, who Obi-Wan described as the best pilot in the galaxy and a good friend. So when he refers to Skywalker, he's actually talking about about Anakin, which at this moment I don't believe the name has been revealed yet.
No, it wouldn't have been. That was until in Return of the Jedi.
Yeah. So the first script Lucas wrote was about Luke's father and his relationship to Darth Vader and Ben Kenobi. Lucas decided he didn't like it and wrote the completely different second script with Luke as its main character. The plot was straight out of the Hardy Boys, Luke's older brother. A battle-hardened warrior arrived on Tatooine to find Luke so they could rescue his father, an old Jedi. Slowly, the characters evolved. The father figure became a friend of the father, Ben Kenobi. The older brother became Han Solo, a cynical smuggler. At one point, Luke was a girl, and Han fell in love with her. Then Lucas decided to use both Luke and the girl, and Leia was created. Also a 4-letter name beginning with
So
L.
that's why they're twins.
So no one would get confused. A climactic battle with hundreds of Wookiees invading the Death Star was replaced by a World War II aerial dogfight copied from the Dam Busters. The first 3 episodes will depict a much younger Ben Kenobi leading Skywalker into the Clone Wars. They take place about 20 years earlier, and according to Lucas, will show the early life of Luke's father when Luke was a little boy. Since Luke's father is supposed to die at the end of the trilogy, I wonder why Lucas qualified it as his early life. The evolution of Darth Vader is interesting too. In the second script, Vader started as an intergalactic bounty hunter, tracking down and murdering Jedi Knights for the Emperor. Then Vader became a Dark Lord with religious overtones, and Lucas created Boba Fett from that early concept of Vader as a bounty hunter. So now at this point, we're kind of going from this is the backstory of these trilogies, and now he's starting to get carried away as far as his, I think his speculation goes with some of this stuff.
I'm noticing that George never throws away an idea.
Right. No, yeah. And even if some of this stuff was potential fact, I mean, yeah, nothing ever gets tossed away completely. He changes the original thing and then adds the previous idea into something else. Yeah, exactly. I mean, a lot of the concept art from the Phantom Menace is still being recycled through the likes of, Star Wars Rebels and even the sequels and now even the High Republic. Some of the designs for some of the Jedi were taken from the High Republic too. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, nothing ever gets completely tossed away.
Right.
Which is nice. But I don't know. Has anything
you say that now, but what about some of the sequel stuff?
we can
that was some recycled too, right?
Yeah, a little too much. So yeah, I don't know. Like, what do you guys think of that Wookiee fight? That sounds expensive.
That's probably why I got changed to Ewoks.
I think the idea of furry beings attacking the Empire, yeah, that was definitely reused.
Yeah, I love how he because it's originally if it's originally supposed to be Wookiees attacking the Death Star, then it's changed to the dogfight. That means George Lucas, he still wanted a giant Wookiee fight at some point, because it was
true.
in Return of the Jedi, it was originally supposed to be again a Wookiee fight, not an Ewok fight. So he's like, no, I'll keep it. And then somehow someone convinced him, no, we don't want your Wookiees.
I'm gonna pause right here. What about the droid attack on the Wookiees?
He finally got it in.
Insert that right there. All right, yeah, keep going.
He finally got it in episode 3, where he was allowed to have a giant
his own thing.
Yeah. He finally gets his Wookiee fight.
Was it because it was supposed to be too violent? I think a lot of the
just too expensive.
Concept art was Wookiees like tearing limbs off of stormtroopers and stuff. Like, it was pretty gory.
I mean, like for every potential Wookiee in this time, like in 1980, I mean, would have been a person in a costume, right? With the Ewoks, I mean, the fabric and materials used to make all those, not only were they paying child actors or small people, but they had a lot less material that they needed, like three or four Ewok costumes per Wookiee costume. 3
Ewoks per Wookiee,
yeah. So I mean, like the Wookiees was just to do a battle like that would be incredibly expensive. So
maybe that's why. Maybe he's like, you know what? There are a lot more small people actors than there are actors with gigantism.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Let's do the Ewok
Yeah. That's
Peter
a good point.
It was just every Wookiee.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. So let's keep going here. In the first trilogy, Vader is a very young Jedi who becomes Obi-Wan's apprentice. I can't imagine any boy younger than 10 going through the kind of Jedi training we've already seen. And I can't picture Obi-Wan describing anyone over 18 as a very young Jedi. In Empire, Luke is somewhere between 21 and 25, and Yoda says he's too old to begin the training. Skywalker is old enough for Kenobi to call him a friend, probably around 25 or 30. Yoda describes Skywalker as a powerful Jedi with much anger in him. Before he completes his training, Darth Vader succumbs to the dark side of the Force. What is the Force? Obi-Wan explained it as an energy field generated by living things. It surrounds each and every one of us. Some men believe it directs our actions and not the other way around. Knowledge of the Force and how to manipulate it was what gave Jedi his special power. And the dark side of the Force. It's using that energy field for revenge or excitement or personal gain. Obi-Wan warns Luke never to use the Force as a weapon, but only for knowledge or defense. The Force allows the Jedi to see into the future, but an uncertain future that can be altered by current actions. George Lucas says that the common link between all primitive religions is a belief in supernatural powers, whether you call them gods or spirits or ghosts. The Force is a homogenized version of that common element. Call it man's need to believe in something more powerful than himself. Darth Vader destroyed and murdered the pilot Skywalker. Obi-Wan opposed Vader, and at the end of the fierce lightsaber duel, drove Vader into molten lava of an active volcano. So, I guess this is more pulling from perhaps some Lucas interviews of the past.
Yeah, I was surprised that last bit is in there. That means he would have officially announced that Anakin was going to burn to a crisp. Like,
yeah, so
we're asking, like, hey, why Darth Vader in his robot?
Why is he so crispy?
Yeah.
So here's the thing. Here's one thing to kind of keep in mind as we keep reading this thing. This guy who's writing this article is on the front page too, with Dark Lord deceives son with half-truth revelation.
I love that.
He doesn't believe that Vader's telling the truth when he says to Luke that he's his father. Mm-hmm. So as he writes this article, he's keeping that in mind. And so he thinks Darth Vader and Anakin are separate people still. He doesn't believe that Vader is actually telling the truth.
That's probably a lot of people thought that. Why would you believe a villain, right?
Right.
I mean, if Kylo Ren, Darth Vader told me my parents, I wouldn't believe them.
Right. I mean, I believe Kylo Ren when he said to Rey that her parents were no one, but I guess I was duped as well. JJ. So Vader survived, but his body was ruined, and he must wear an ominous black breathing mask that also hides his disfigured face. A powered exoskeleton added a foot to his height and tremendous strength to his crippled limbs. Too weak to face Vader again, and knowing that his fellow Jedi Knights were disbanded, disorganized, or dead, Obi-Wan hid in the Tatooine desert until Skywalker's son was old enough to become a Jedi Knight and defeat Darth Vader. So there's a couple photos on this page. One of them is of Vader in the TIE Fighter from the Trench Run. And it says, Darth Vader, as with all the Skywalker clones, seems to exhibit an unusual talent for flying small spacecrafts at high speeds with exceptional accuracy. So now he's starting to make theories that Darth Vader is actually a Skywalker clone and that Luke might also be a clone as well.
Twist. They're all clones. Every character.
They're all attacking each other.
And here's a photograph of Mark Hamill from Empire. As Obi-Wan's first apprentice, Darth Vader may have looked like a young Luke. So now we get a photograph of him there.
It's actually not that far off.
No, I mean Hayden and Mark Hamill in his younger years actually have some similarities, like facially. Yeah. Luke Skywalker is just one of a series of Skywalker clones. Had no idea that he might someday have to confront his own evil alter ego.
I wonder if this inspired the Force Unleashed games at all.
I wonder. How does here. Yeah, so Tatooine was Skywalker's home, where he owned a farm before he joined Obi-Wan in the Clone Wars. This is something he's speculating about Anakin. So he thinks Anakin's home was Tatooine, where he owned a farm before he joined. That's not far off. I mean, like, Anakin was a slave on Tatooine. He didn't exactly own a farm, but I mean, it's close enough. I mean, the fact that he's going off of like the fact that Luke's aunt and uncle live on Tatooine, and I mean,
it makes sense if your family's there, right? So
right, yeah, exactly. How does the story end? The entire story, not just the half we've seen so far. And at this point, it's not even half. Obi-Wan, presumably seeing the future through the Force, has warned Luke only a fully trained Jedi Knight with the Force as his ally will conquer Vader and his Emperor. But Luke leaves Dagobah before he completed his training, and Obi-Wan grieves. There goes our only hope. Yoda disagrees with him. No, Obi-Wan's former teacher corrected him. There is another.
There's actually a dozen. We have a whole bunch of them in vats ready to send out.
We have many Skywalker clones at the ready.
Send out number 25. Yes.
Just wake up another one.
Oh my goodness. There's just like half the tanks are Luke's and half the tanks are Snoke's.
And Rey's. Another fully trained Jedi Knight besides Luke, George Lucas comments that there is another, and there has been for a long time. The mystery deepens, but Lucas says it won't be completely explained until the saga ends with episode 3, sometime in 1992. Can you imagine that?
Wow.
I mean,
it wasn't that far off.
No, how could, like, this guy thinks episode 3 is coming out in 1992. I guess he thinks, Revenge of the Jedi, okay, 1983. We'll get one 3 years after that, 3 years after that.
Yeah, just go consistently. So it's really only roughly a 10-year gap, honestly, which isn't that long when it comes to films.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and this day and age with like they're able to do it, faster. So, so now, I mean, a whole trilogy can come out and a whole trilogy can come out within 5 years kind of thing or less. I mean, he's kind of making the assumption that Revenge of the Sith comes out in 1992. And that would be
disappointed.
Yeah. Can you imagine? When is the next Star Wars movie coming out? Oh, like a couple of years, maybe like 20 years from now. Like,
well, he told people he was just done. He wasn't going to make them, I think, at the end of Sith.
He went back and forth. He went back and forth, I think, a lot of that. But here he kind of gets more into that. That's ridiculous. I think we can make a pretty good guess who the other is right now. Let's pretend that let's pretend, and that's the name of the game, isn't it? Let's pretend that we can see July of 1986 through the Force, and episode 1, The Clone Wars, has just opened in San Francisco theaters. All right, so now we're pretending inside another pretending thing. So 1986, episode 1, The Clone Wars comes out. Okay, the Clone Wars actually came out in 2008 as an animated film, but 1986. All right, we'll roll with that. The story opens with a young Obi-Wan Kenobi pushing his way through a crowded, far-off city, where he senses a tremor in the Force. He follows it to a slave boy surrounded by an angry crowd. Slavery keeps appearing in the Star Wars galaxy, and one of the duties of the Jedi Knights was to stop it. The mark of a slave is a steel collar around the neck. It's also an obedience device. At a radio signal, solenoids tighten the collar around the slave's throat, choking him. The slave collar appears in Han Solo at World's End, a Star Wars novel by Brian Davey.
I was wondering where they're getting that from.
Yeah. The boy's collar was too small for him, and when his cruel master touched the punishment button, it started to crush his windpipe. Out of a blind self-preservation, the boy used the Force. Like Luke, he had no idea it existed, but in his last desperate moment, he willed his master to know exactly how it felt to die. To his surprise, he discovered that the illusion of suffocation was just as deadly as the collar itself. The penalty for killing a master was death, but Obi-Wan intervened. He purchased the boy at a fair price, reorganizing him as a lost Jedi offspring. The boy gave his name as Darth Vader, but when he tried to call Obi-Wan master, the great warrior admonished him sternly. Upon their return to his ship, the Millennium Falcon, Obi-Wan watched carefully as the boy met the Falcon's pilot, Skywalker. Carefully, this is Anakin. So young Darth Vader meets Anakin Skywalker on the Millennium Falcon. Carefully, because he had small galaxy, absolutely. Because he had reorganized Vader as an identical clone to Skywalker, though several years younger. Here's the answer to Empire's burning question. When Vader claimed to be Luke's father, Luke didn't want to believe him, but somehow he could feel the truth in the Dark Lord's words. The Force told Luke that Vader was his father because Vader is a clone of the same donor as Skywalker. Genetically speaking, Vader is Skywalker. Ooh. This also explains why Luke saw his own face under Vader's mask on Dagobah. That's an interesting theory.
Yeah,
that scene always confused me as a kid watching it.
Agreed.
Right?
It's deep. It's a deep scene. I mean, I've always taken it as, oh, this is what could happen to Luke if he goes down the dark path and joins the dark side. He would become the next Vader, right?
Yeah, we see that now. But when you're a kid seeing it for the first time and you see that Luke's in there,
yeah,
like if you're 10 years old, you're not going to think that deeply about it.
Right. No, yeah. And it makes me wonder, it makes me want to ask somebody about like who's never seen Star Wars before in today, and then watches that scene for the first time, assuming they haven't seen anything else, like what their opinion is on it. Cause yeah, it is very like an abstract scene, cuts off the head of Darth Vader and it blows up and it's like his own face in there. It's like, that's really odd, but he's taking it literally, going, there's another Skywalker under that helmet there. And he's not far off with the theory that there's another Skywalker under there, but he's thinking of the wrong Skywalker. Like, he still thinks Anakin and Darth Vader are separate people, and he doesn't believe that Luke is actually the son of Vader. So, yeah, I mean, now we know it to be a metaphorical thing, but yeah, this guy's taking it pretty literally. Interesting theory, though.
I also noticed that the choking collar thing would have been foreshadowing to then Darth Vader choking out everybody later.
Yes, yeah. That's a good point.
And also the fact that George kind of used that idea, sort of, but it wasn't a collar. There was that chip that the slaves all had that would detonate if they tried to run away.
Yeah, it's like an implant or something.
I think the original expanded novel actually had a storyline to go with that, but it wasn't in the movies.
I think it's interesting that he thinks that Darth Vader was a slave boy And that is 100%
That's actually accurate.
That's actually accurate. Yeah. And that's impressive. Like, I don't know how he came up with that theory, but I was like, oh, that's cool. Like, I guess maybe he came up with that due to the whole choke collar thing. I don't know. That's the thing. Like, I don't know where he's getting half this stuff. He's just kind of putting this all together in his own words, just paragraph after paragraph.
If you had reached out to the author and get him to like be interviewed 50 years later.
This was written in 1980. I don't even know if the guy's still alive.
If the name's on there, man, you might be able to find him. Maybe he still works for the same company.
And he was like, this guy was waiting. This guy thought that the series would have ended in 1992, and he was holding out. He probably waited till 99, and he's gone now, man. Like,
this is so the guy who wrote this article, I don't know if you want to Google him. His name is Bill Hayes.
Bill Hader?
Bill Hader?
Bill Hayes. Bill Hayes.
Oh man, I got excited.
It's Hays. Is how his last name is spelled. So it says speculation by Bill Hayes. So yeah, and again, the magazine is called Fantastic Films. So you want to look for Bill Hayes of Fantastic Films 1980, and maybe you'll find something. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe he's on Facebook or something like that. Who knows? But all right, let's keep going here. There is another way to interpret Vader's startling revelation.
I found a website. And
you found something?
And it's actually the exact magazine that we're reading right now. It was published January 8th, 2009, and it's titled "From the Crap Archives: Fantastic Films Magazine."
That's amazing. There is another way to interpret Vader's startling revelation. He could be saying that the pilot Skywalker succumbed to the dark side of the Force. Again, not bad. Killed Vader and donned Vader's mask and costume. If that's true, why didn't Skywalker kill Yoda with the rest of the Jedi? Well, it's because he got away. If he trained under Yoda, he knows that Luke will wind up on Dagobah eventually and could have saved a lot of Imperial probe droids. No, Vader doesn't know about Yoda, and that means he can't be Skywalker. So he kind of comes up with a theory there and then goes back on the theory saying, oh, that can't be.
Yeah, it disproves it.
Yeah. Let's talk about the Millennium Falcon for a moment. What an odd name for a beat-up freighter. A falcon is a bird of prey, a fighting bird. Millennium refers to 1,000 generations of Jedi Knights before Luke. Interesting theory. Didn't you ever wonder why Falcon is the fastest hunk of junk in the galaxy? It's because she was designed by Jedi scientists as Skywalker's private warship.
I like this. The real reason? I thought the name was cool.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The private warship to protect his cover identity as a smuggler. In Star Wars, Luke said, "My father didn't fight in the Clone Wars. He was no knight, just a navigator on a space freighter." That gives us another clue about the mysterious Skywalker. He liked disguises, so people would underestimate his powers. On Mos Eisley, Obi-Wan knew fate was helping them when Han introduced himself as the captain of the Millennium Falcon. Maybe you've heard of her? Should I? Answered Ben, tongue pressed firmly in cheek. Han bragged that the Falcon's speed came from his special modifications, but she was just as fast when Lando owned her. Remember, Han was originally Luke's older brother, and would only be natural for him to bring along his missing father's personal ship. Han's identity was changed, but he kept the Falcon. Okay, let's go back to the Clone Wars. A clone is a human being grown from cells of an existing person, producing an exact genetic duplicate. Normally, a child is a random combination of genes from two separate parents, and thus unique. If one parent possesses a special talent, a normal child may or may not inherit it. A clone definitely would. Only certain people can use the Force, Obi-Wan suggests. It can be inherited. Only certain individuals could recognize the Force for what it was. They were mercilessly labeled charlatans, fakers, mystics, and worse. The Force is not magic. The Force is a scientific explanation for those mysteries we call magic or religion. So it's interesting to me that the fact that the Force can't be used by everybody is already a present kind of fan knowledge at this point.
Well, I think it's kind of obvious, or else why wouldn't Han Solo be using it?
Yeah, I mean, this all goes back to that whole debate as to, midichlorians and all that, right? And so, like, if you're in the boat that likes the explanation of midichlorians, it kind of brings a little more reason as to why some people can use the Force and then other people just can't, right? But
because technically, everyone is bound together by the same thing, right?
Right, yeah. And midichlorians, I guess it all comes down to that count. Like, it's like, oh, if you have enough or like a large amount of it, then then you can use it like a Jedi would. But
so what's the word on blood transfusions?
I don't know. What do you guys think about that exact theory in The Mandalorian? Because that's actually come up now in canon.
That's a good point. Well, obviously it worked because that's how they made Snoke.
Yeah, if that is indeed Snoke. I don't know. Bryce, were you in that discussion when we were talking about Snoke in Mandalorian?
Didn't they try to do this with Grievous as well?
I don't think it was Force stuff.
Because
I thought Legends?
that they were like that. Master Sifo Dyas. I thought Dooku used like his blood to kind of like reinvigorate Grievous.
Yeah, I remember. I remember that just reminded me of something. I remember back when Revenge of the Sith was coming out, there were fan theories about this that Grievous was made from the DNA and carcass of Darth Maul's dead body.
I like that one.
Yeah, I don't know if any of you guys remember that, but I don't like that was something that
was a fan theory floating around.
It was, yeah, and you know who told it to me was Diego.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty hilarious back then.
Well, I do know like that. Sifo Dyas, I think, was used to kind of bring Grievous back because, like, I think the whole thing is that Dooku self-sabotages one of Grievous's transports and like kind of says like, oh yeah, the Republic blew you up out of the sky and they killed all your friends too. Don't worry.
I remember this too. Was this the old animated series, the 2D one? Or was this a comic? Okay.
Yeah, it was a comic. It was the first kind of time that or the first kind of time that I saw that like Sifo Dyas was like killed by Dooku or whatever. Yeah.
Interesting. So that little
Grievous
the fact
did
that
not get force powers after that. That's all I guess I'm trying to talk about here.
Yeah, like Sifo Dyas being killed by Dooku, that's actually been rolled out into canon because, of course, the comic you're referring to, I guess that's like Legends, like the old stuff.
I guess,
but it's cool to think that they recycled some of that stuff because in the Clone Wars, like Sifo Dyas was killed by Tyrannus. In a way, like he hired the Pikes to do it.
More or less, kind of always been a thing because I think that also happened in the Darth Plagueis novel.
Just like people killing Jedi. I don't know. I think that happens like, all the time.
Palps and Plagueis both.
Oh, like, I see what you mean.
Used Sifo Dyas, manipulated him, and then offed him.
I see what you mean. Yeah. So, oh yeah. You know what? I need to reread that section because so in the Clone Wars, like which is like the canon story goes like Palpatine and Dooku that were plotting with and Sifo Dyas joined Dooku's cause, and then they kind of used him to a means to an end, hired the Pikes to then kill Sifo Dyas, and then pretty much frame Sifo Dyas as like the one that came up with the idea for the clone army and all this and that. So that kind of threw anybody off the trail that Dooku and Palpatine were involved. So that's interesting though, because I guess that idea of Sifo Dyas dying came from that old comic book. But all right, so let's see where we at here in this thing.
In any case, I don't know about the blood transfusion.
Right.
If there's any more examples of that like throughout.
Yeah, not many, that's for sure.
Remember there was some weird story about a clone that gets Jedi powers, or like trying to clone Jedi.
Force Unleashed 2?
Well, there's that, and then there's also the Lego Chronicles.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, everyone's favorite.
It's
lore.
canon. They said all games going forward are canon. Take that, Pablo.
So he goes into saying, in THX 1138, George Lucas gave us a brief glimpse of a reproduction center where tiny fetuses were growing inside bottles. We saw those bottles again in Empire when Luke is treated for injuries in a tank of water. One thing you can say about George Lucas, he never throws an idea away.
That's accurate.
The same one shows up again and again. So
yeah, we saw that Attack of the Clones.
Yeah, we did.
On Camino.
THX 1138 was Robert Duvall's name in that picture. R2-D2 and C-3PO had been shortened to R2 and 3PO because that's how they sound when spoken. Consider Obi-Wan. That's obviously Obi-Wan. But why does Ben get a special name? In Star Wars, only robots get names like that. And why did he stop using it? Only he told Luke, Obi-Wan. Now that's a name I haven't heard in a long time. Of course I know him.
He's a clone too.
I haven't gone by that name, Obi-Wan, since before you were born. But what happened before Luke was born? When Princess Leia sent the message in R2, she used the title General Obi-Wan Kenobi. You served my father in the Clone Wars. Obi-Wan is a clone designation.
What?
I mean, it does sound like a clone designation.
Man, I feel like this guy was on a roll, and I was just like, what? Really? This is a bit of a stretch.
But entirely based on the name, I actually totally see that.
Yeah,
I can see him thinking this.
CT5555.
Yeah, totally. Using it might have attracted attention at perhaps one of the Emperor's bounty hunters. Obi-Wan was the first clone of a man with the initials OB. But who?
He was the first one. He was the Obi-Wan.
Yeah, he was the Obi-Wan.
And Obi-3.
The first one. Originally a member of the Bad Batch.
Oh, man.
Obi-2 Kenobi.
Obi-2 Kenobi.
This sounds like a fun fan spin-off.
Yeah.
Obi-9 Kenobi. I don't know. Just goes on and on.
Oh
He's like old Ben Kenobi, but the fun uncle that takes Luke into the city, and they go
get some drinks. Yeah. They go to nightclubs and find a bunch of cheap floozies.
Remember, the saga describes the fall of the Republic and the rise of the Empire. Lucas didn't invent those names. He borrowed them and much of his plot from the actual fall of the Roman Republic and the rise of the Roman Empire. And our galaxy, that took place about 100 BC. In the Star Wars universe, Rome never fell because it was protected by the Jedi Knights, an ancient religious order with control over the Force. A Jedi Knight has no interest in ruling, only in keeping the rightful government in power. Yoda said, adventure, excitement, a Jedi craves not these things. Anger, fear, aggression, the dark side of the Force they are. Easily they flow, quick to join in the fight. Beware of them. A heavy price is paid for the power they bring. What famous person taught... Oh, it's interesting that section is in quotes. I wonder if he pulled that out of maybe one of the books or like a novelization or something like that.
Could be.
What famous person taught that philosophy during the Roman era? To give you a clue, he also chose to die rather than to fight back against the evil tyrant. Immediately after he died, his body mysteriously disappeared, and he reappeared in a vision to his disciples. Jesus Christ, of course. So he goes on. Okay, I'm just gonna this article is actually pretty long. We're running out of time. I'm gonna skip through a whole bunch of this.
Yeah, this is spiraling down to a very crazy place. Yeah.
He kind of starts to make comparisons that Obi-Wan is actually the Jesus of Star Wars. He also gets into some other legends that it makes comparisons to, like Tolkien's Lord of the Rings and King Arthur.
Little did he know that Darth Vader was the Jesus all along.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a couple pictures on this page. Princess Leia might become the wife of Han Solo and reign over the new planetary alliance after the Empire's defeat. He was bang on with that one.
Bam.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm surprised he did that even after. I mean, I guess the love tension is there in Empire, even though she kisses Luke.
She didn't really rule though. She became a general and like basically a private military.
Right.
Yeah, he was totally wrong.
Luke, there's a picture of Luke here on Bespin again, peeking around the corner. During the chase through the corridor of Cloud City, Luke is shot at and missed by Boba Fett. Why should a professional bounty hunter miss? I think he's starting to allude to the fact that perhaps there's a bigger reason, and maybe he's a clone as well.
Or
Yoda,
Darth Vader told him not to because there's a trap.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Well, he is right. Boba Fett is a clone.
That's true.
Yoda, the Jedi Master, tells Obi-Wan, even as Luke leaves his Jedi training on Dagobah, that there's still one other hope if Luke fails to defeat Darth Vader. And then,
it's Boba Fett.
And then in there's a picture of Alec Guinness here. Sir Alec Guinness was ill during the filming of Empire and consequently made only brief appearances, but he may get to play his evil clone alter ego, the Blind Emperor, in Revenge.
Just everyone's a clone.
Everyone's a clone, man. There's not a whole lot of. I already pre-read this article. There's not a whole lot in the pieces that I'm skipping that are actually worth talking about. Here, Obi-Wan is probably closer to Merlin in the King Arthur legend, and Luke is the young Arthur who finds the magical sword, Excalibur. He starts making comparison. So he just starts to make comparisons at this point, rather than speculating.
Theorizing, yeah.
Let's see here. So he does go on to say, so he makes comparisons to Obi-Wan being like Job from biblical history, wandering the desert and such. And then he also goes on to say, I think he went on to, here he is. Lucas went back and rewrote Obi-Wan as a more sympathetic character, but it was Guinness who really created the role. In that perspective, I'll merely note that OBE stands for the Officer of the Order of the British Empire, and Guinness has been knighted by Britain's Queen. While mixing the sound for American Graffiti, Walter Murch asked, George, get me R2-D2, meaning the second reel of the second dialogue track. Lucas replied, that's a great name, Walter, and wrote it down. So don't bother looking for any deep significance in R2's name. When I think of Princess Leia Organa, it always reminds me of... Jeez. When I think of Princess Leia Organa, it always reminds me of getting laid.
I thought he was going to say my left hand.
Since Lucas wanted to make a strong moral statement, her last name probably came from organic.
Wow.
Jeez. Man, this guy, man. This is why I'm skipping over some of this stuff, but
this was the ridiculous thing I've ever heard.
Oh, it gets worse too. It starts turning into some sort of graphic fantasy.
Oh no.
Here. I like to think that the original Boba Fett was a woman, hiding her face to... article continued on page 44. Okay, skip to 44. Enter a male-dominated profession. Boba could be a family nickname for Roberta. And Fett could be the last survivor of a group of commandos the Jedis exterminated during the Clone Wars, so she could rightfully hold a grudge against all Jedis, including Skywalker. Removing her armor, she tricks Luke's father into falling in love with her and led him into Vader's trap. Oh man! When Darth Vader was still an apprenticeship, the Emperor offered him a chance to destroy those who he had murdered his foster parents and sold him into slavery. Vader succumbed to the dark side of revenge, and the Jedi Knights tried to stop him. When the Emperor sentenced all the Jedi to death, it touched off the conflict that became known as the Clone War. Vader betrayed and murdered the pilot Skywalker, or so everyone believed. Actually, Skywalker escaped Vader's trap, leaving behind a charred body and donned a disguise. For 20 years, he has moved among the Imperial troops, waiting for his chance. He has hidden Jedis and falsely reported their death to Vader, slowly working his way to the Dark Lord's confidence. Where is Skywalker? Obviously, he hides his face and tries to fade into the background. But if you look closely, he's there. When Luke entered Cloud City, he saw Han being carried away. Suddenly, a blaster bolt struck the wall in front of him, warning him of Vader's trap. How could Boba Fett, the deadliest bounty hunter in the galaxy, miss such an easy target? More important, why did R2-D2 bump Luke's arm? So he's alluding to the fact that Anakin could actually be Boba Fett. And that
I thought Boba Fett was a woman.
Or that's another thing that he brings up. He's saying that
covering his bases. He's got like 10 different theories. One of them's got to be right.
Yeah, he's got multiple theories here. So either Boba Fett's a woman and comes from the family Roberta, or Boba Fett is Anakin and is hiding amongst the Imperial allies and warning Luke of the trap that Vader set. So yeah, a lot of stuff going on here. But why did R2-D2 bump Luke's arm?
That's the real question. I want to get to the bottom of that.
I want to get to the bottom of that too, man. Like, there seems a lot of substance there.
I think there's a real story point going on here.
So he bumps Luke's arm and Luke as like a warning?
I get. Well, I mean, he bumps. I think he just bumps into him because it's R2-D2.
Yeah, the scene where R2 like does
Maybe
like
there's a small man inside.
go into
Can't
somebody.
really control the.
There's a scene in Attack of the Clones where R2 does the same thing, where him and 3PO are in the Geonosian factory. And he
knocks 3PO off.
He bumps 3PO at first, I think maybe by accident. He's like, oh, calm down, R2. I almost fell. and then he does it again on purpose and pushes him in. But yeah, I don't know. It seems to be a common thing with R2.
He's just a jerk.
Yeah. Greedo was not. Oh, there's a picture of Greedo and Han in the cantina. And
Greedo's a clone too. He's a clone that went wrong.
Oh, here the caption is.
He's also Luke Skywalker.
Greedo was not the only bounty hunter interested in bringing Han Solo back to Jabba the Hutt, as is witnessed by Boba Fett's mutual interest in the young smuggler. So, because Luke's real father is hiding behind Boba Fett's scarred battle armor, only a fully trained Jedi Knight will defeat Vader. There is another, and there has been for a long time. Ben really thinks Skywalker is dead, but he didn't know about Yoda's other either. Really? Oh, he's misreading that conversation, because Yoda says there is another, and he thinks that Ben Kenobi doesn't know what Yoda's talking about.
I mean, it does. I could see how it would come across the way in that scene.
Yeah, I guess so.
At least surprised.
Yeah, because Ben's like, crap. Like, there's no one else. And then it was like, what are you talking about? Of course there's
another one.
Remember, it says here, remember, I told you George Lucas never throws away an idea. At the end of Star Wars, we thought Han Solo was gone, but he reappeared at the last moment. At the end of Revenge of the Jedi, Skywalker will reappear to save Luke's life, and after the battle's over, sits down to tell Luke how it all happened. That idea is kind of similar to what actually happens. I mean, Anakin does come back and save Luke's life, but, again, it's like him and Vader are one of the same. So it's interesting to think that he thinks Anakin's still out there and that he's going to save the day at the end of the third film.
Well, he does. He throws that bird out of a giant pit.
Only we'll have to wait another 3 years to hear his story begin. In the next episode, actually, the first episode of the Star Wars saga, more likely we won't get to see Skywalker in Jedi. No, Lucas will keep that a secret until the end of episode 3 when Skywalker fights his way out of Vader's trap. Lucas has said the whole story won't be revealed until then, and then everything will become obvious. And what about the Emperor? Will he survive the next episode and come back in a third trilogy set 20 years in the future?
You're adding that.
No, dude, it's right here. It's right. I'm not even kidding.
Wow. And that's one of the parts that actually came true.
Yeah. No.
Yeah. Oh my god, yeah, I wasn't even thinking about that.
Yeah, and it was even a clone.
Oh, yeah. This guy is probably like in his 90s now going, I told you so.
Oh, man.
This guy went from like, all my theories are wrong, and then he waited another 10 years. He's like, I knew it.
Actually, you know what this kind of reminds me of a little bit? There's this Doctor Who episode where there's these two groups that are at war for like generations, and they just keep cloning. Both sides just clone themselves forever. So they're just sending waves of their clones at each other. It's just a never-ending war.
Oh, man.
Sounds great.
So, for the record, although his voice in Empire was done by Clive Revill, so this is before all the special editions. We're talking about, theatrical release here. That old granny-looking Emperor version, right? So the voice was done by So the voice was done by Clive Revill. The face belonged to Alec Guinness. My guess is that Guinness will portray the Emperor in Jedi as a clone of Obi-Wan, making the Clone War a struggle between the Emperor and his good clone. A Skywalker and Vader are just pawns in a much larger struggle. It was pretty far off there. Alec Guinness.
Interesting idea, though. Clone Wars only includes 2 clones, or 1 clone, a regular guy.
Yeah. I think he's like starting to make theories that the Clone Wars alludes to like clones of each other fighting each other kind of thing.
It's like every hero has a villainous clone that they have to defeat.
Right. Alec Guinness developed serious problems in his left eye about 8 months before Empire started filming. Specialists warned him he could go blind if he didn't stay out of bright lights. He stopped making films except for a one-day appearance for his Empire duties and requested that the name not appear in the ads to keep from disappointing fans who might have come to see him. Did you notice that Emperor's funny eyes beneath the cloak? Guinness was wearing special sunglasses to shield him from the bright studio lights. I think he will portray the Emperor as a blind man. His eyes burned out to keep from seeing visions, who turned the dark side to avenge their loss.
Though. I like that.
I didn't know that story, but I kind of wish they just had him just without the monkey eyes, so just the Emperor wearing like black shades.
Yeah. Remember how Paul Newman's thumbs were broken in The Hustler? Same idea.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I don't know what he's alluding to there. I'm not old enough to understand that reference. What else will happen in Jedi? Luke will return to Dagobah to finish his training, at least. Lucas has said that Dagobah will be rebuilt. Supposedly more than a year will pass in Luke's life before the film begins. He'll wake up from nightmares with terrible pain in his artificial hand. Leia will diagnose it as a psychosomatic, explaining that Luke's subconscious is trying to avoid another confrontation with Vader because Luke now believes he will lose. Luke can't control his lightsaber as well as the artificial hand. As well with the artificial hand.
It turns on him. He's attacked by his own robot hand.
I thought there was some innuendo in there. Luke cannot control his lightsaber with his new artificial hand.
He can't control his lightsaber as well with the artificial hand.
Okay, yeah.
But he compensates.
Yeah,
but he compensates by practicing with the Force's power over others' minds. when Leia resists Luke's romantic advances out of loyalty for her absent Han, Luke agonizes that he could make her love him by planting the suggestion in her mind, and she would never know. I wonder if Christopher Nolan got the idea of Inception. the entire movie Inception is based on this theory.
Maybe. Could you imagine some Jedi with a woman just like, you will love me?
Yeah. Dude, I'm pretty sure there's a Robot Chicken joke about that too.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, it's that one where they're making jokes about the president. I think it was like, who was it again? Which president was it again?
Was it Clinton?
No, it was
Bush.
It was Bush. Yeah, I think it was Bush. They did some Robot Chickens on him. So, Luke discovers his own dark side. Ben keeps worrying that Luke will be seduced by the dark side, but so far it hasn't offered Luke anything he wants. This is the biggest flaw in Star Wars, referring to Episode 4. Luke's only real dilemma has been whether to save his friends' lives at the risk of losing the bigger fight against the Emperor, and Yoda negates that by revealing there's another warrior to take Luke's place. What about Han Solo? That classic case of juvenile delinquent who grows up during the big war. If he's spent a year out of suspended animation with Jabba killing him, he'd probably be locked into a slave collar and working on the spice mines of Kessel. More likely, he'll be inside the carbonite propped up in Jabba's spaceship like a Picasso sculpture. So at this point, I guess it's assumed that Jabba lives in a spaceship rather than a temple or palace.
Oh, yeah, that would be
Tatooine.
revealed. What's funny is then that second part of him being a sculpture is dead on.
Yeah,
They
totally.
didn't melt him down to be a slave.
When Lando and Chewie show up, their job won't just be to rescue Han, it'll be to con the pirate fleet to joining the rebellion. Meanwhile, back on Trantor, remember how Luke described Tatooine as the farthest point from the bright center of the galaxy? That's from Foundation, and the final battle that will take place above the Emperor's home planet, where Leia used to work as a senator at the bright center of the galaxy. So I guess in today's mindset, he's referring to Coruscant or Coruscant. Coruscant?
Coruscant. Yeah, it's spelled like Coruscant, but it's
Croissant.
That's how you pronounce it in French.
It's just been a while since you've seen it written out.
It's been a while. Yeah, it's been a while since So, I think, I don't know. I mean, all this stuff is, the fact that Leia used to work as a senator, under the Emperor and the Imperial Senate, like, that's pretty accurate. The fact that the Imperial Senate is on Coruscant, right?
Yep.
So, yeah. The rebels don't have enough ships to defeat the Imperial fleet. Oh, yeah, bang on with that. Han
Never
arrives,
changes.
Yeah, Han arrives at the crucial moment, leading the pirates and all the Jedis that Boba Fett only pretended to kill, and shows us Kenner's new line of space toys for that Christmas. Afterward, Jabba points out that his ships won the battle, not the rebels, and demands his share of the spoils. Han suggests a compromise. He will marry Leia and establish a dual monarchy, one from the pirates and one from the rebellion, until the Republic is restored through the galaxy. Jabba agrees, and then Han has to convince Leia, but true love conquers all. A lot of territorial governors have their own fleets, and 20 years later, Leia is still on the throne, and Han is off fighting wars, and Luke wonders if he's fighting to restore the Republic or Leia's birthright. But that's another trilogy, the third. Enough guessing. As George Lucas says, the movies are gospel and everything else is gossip, but he certainly can't expect us to wait 3 years without trying to unravel his clues. That's and the new motto of Star Wars fans: 3 years is too long. And don't forget the old motto: may the force be with you. And that's the end of the article.
Well, it was wrong again because Luke got depressed and hid away on an island.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I don't know what he's pretty much way off with that third
That last
trilogy.
bit there, the whole royalty thing, and like and
Right.
Jabba, having a fleet in Return of the Jedi.
Well, and at this point, Jabba's
to me.
nobody's seen Jabba yet, so he doesn't realize that Jabba's actually this big slug creature.
Because the version that they would have gotten would have been the guy with the fur coat and not Jabba.
Not even. And
the whole scene was gone?
Cut. Yeah, the whole scene was gone. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the only time that people have seen it in a completed final format of the film was when he was a CG slug. Whenever that version came out in the 90s.
That's when they re-added that shot. Okay.
Yeah.
I always thought the fur coat guy was in there.
That's the un-VFXed version of that sequence that they then put Jabba on top of. And that sequence has been redone twice. So the first special edition added Jabba in and it looked really bad. And then the one that's in the Blu-ray is technically the second version of Jabba's model. That the
bad Jabba version is the one I grew up with.
He looks like he's made of clay.
Yes, the one.
Yeah.
It was also the first version that they added the Ewok blinking in. It's terrifying.
Oh yeah, oh man. So yeah, I don't know. What do we think of this article? I mean, a lot of stuff in there, a lot of craziness.
Yeah,
it's interesting. Go ahead.
I'm not one to usually make assumptions with Star Wars movies, to kind of make my own theories. So, but I know there's a ton of people out there, right? And so why not? Of course, there's going to be people, back then doing the same thing.
Yeah, I thought that was neat too.
Really nice to see a fan that's just excited about what's coming next, so excited that he can't just wait, right? He's got to
yeah. He's got to get all his theories out there.
Try to put everything together. And George Lucas, because always throws in these twists that are obvious but not obvious at the same time. So it kind of lets everyone try to figure out what they are.
Yeah. See, I think it's fascinating that one line, in Star Wars, in A New Hope, one line brought all of this, all of this theory that he'd been building up about this Clone Wars, right? And here's the one thing that he wasn't wrong about. The Clone Wars is a big deal. There's
actually several things he was correct about, just saying.
Yeah, there's several things that he was pretty close with, if not dead on with. But with the whole idea and the concept that the Clone Wars is something to speculate on, despite the fact that the movies take place afterwards. I love the idea that this is the big headline that they printed on the magazine, Clone Wars Explained. They explained from his point of view and what he thinks it is. And, to me, I'm the Clone Wars is a big deal. This is the event, not only that creates the Empire and the events that happen through the original trilogy, but it also is the reason why the Jedi are no longer around. It's what creates that scarred galaxy that we see in the original trilogy in the first place. Mm-hmm. And it's the
rise of tyranny.
Yeah, it's the reason why the Emperor is in the position of power that he's in, right? The Clone Wars was his master plan that we never got to see, that then we see unravel in the prequel trilogy and in the TV show. So, he wasn't wrong in the sense that it's something worth speculating on back in 1980. And I think he's ahead of most people back then as far as how to take that line and kind of expand on it. Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. I think he did a lot more than most people would be able to as far as coming up with theories goes. And I guess that's why he's working for this magazine here. But anyway, that's my thoughts on the matter. But what about you?
Honestly, I was mostly taken aback by how many things he actually got right. I mean, there was a number of things that are kind of way out there, which are absurd looking back, but stuff that he maybe wasn't even correct on 10 years ago, he was correct on after the sequel trilogy.
Yeah,
which was I thought that was quite funny, right?
Yeah, and at that point, I think the sequel trilogy was kind of a back burner plan, because early on in this article, when he starts giving off real facts about the George's plan and his outline and all that stuff, he states yes, this is going to be a 6-movie saga, right? And so the sequel trilogy at that point in time was kind of this thing that it's it's talked about, but it's not a whole lot of confirmation.
And I'm sure a big part of that was George wasn't that concerned, because obviously by the time he did Empire Strikes Back, he had planned that to be 6 films. So he was probably more worried about filling in the blanks before those three movies and then those three movies themselves.
Yeah, exactly. And as time goes by, I mean, that story was building in his head for a long time. And this is, you know, I mean, whether you like the prequels or hate them kind of thing, like I've always been in the boat that absolutely adores those movies. and the one thing about that kind of, which is very even more apparent after reading all this stuff, is that George had so much time to really dial those movies in, you know? And so, like, contrary to what many people would think, George Lucas knew what he was doing, like, when he made those movies, and he made them exactly the way he wanted to make them.
That was a common thought, was people almost thought he made it up as he went along, which ironically is what they did with the sequels.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the way they did
you can kind of
sequels
see the difference then too, like the depth of story.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
Like, it sucks that where George went wrong is he's just not an actor's director. That's the only reason that the prequel suffered, honestly. Yeah,
I believe it, and you know, he's like, you know, he can write that but can't say it, kind of thing.
Exactly.
As Harrison says. So yeah, I mean, like, you get directors like that, right? Where it's like they know how to come up with a good story, but then when it comes down to directing the actors, they just less. They just don't care as much, you know?
Well, I think part of it is George, like a lot of his fans, is more of a nerd, right? So he's not as attuned to social interactions as, I guess, normies. Right. So I think that was a big part of his struggle with directing people.
Yeah.
Which is honestly why I think he was more comfortable getting someone else to be the director, and he was kind of the guy above the director, calling all the shots on the story side and the editing.
Yeah, and that's a position that he's always liked to be in, including with Clone Wars. Like, he was at every single meeting, but the guy directing it, he that's why he hired Dave Filoni to direct Clone Wars, and George was just the one that was kind of showing him the ropes and teaching him about Star Wars, like literally, like Dave is George's apprentice in a way that no one else has been.
Master and apprentice, always two there are.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, and Dave Filoni is the guy that everyone now is kind of flocking to do more Star Wars.
Yeah, for good reason.
Yeah, for good reason. He knows what he's doing, right? So I think I'm just thankful that we got a good team of people working on these live action shows, bringing us all this cool Star Wars content that people are really, you know, not split on anymore. You know, like it sucks being in a time in which, you know,
people are so split.
Yeah, like I know Ryan Johnson might like that, but like I'm not a big fan of it. Like you know, it's like I for years, I mean, I loved the prequels, and then like society was like against me on that. The fact that
it's funny how that was, hey. And then and the sequels come out, and more people are on board with you, and then everyone hates the sequels.
Right, exactly. It's funny how things work out, but you know, I mean, at the end of the day, I've said it before, and you know, I guess we can end off with this: is that like we're all Star Wars fans, including this guy here, writing Clone Wars Explained article, and like, you know, we can love and hate things, but I mean, the reason why we do it is because we care so much about Star Wars. Like we want to see it be the best it can be. Yeah. And a lot of us kind of put expectations on it, and when it doesn't live up to those expectations, we get upset because we care so much about it. So, you know, that's I think that's kind of something that stuck with me after all these years of having debates and this and that. And, you know, I'm like, you know what? Why are we having these debates? Because we all like Star Wars. That's like one thing that kind of sticks in common with every fan. So
true. We all care a little too much. And, you know, maybe we need to just listen to George's advice and move on with our lives.
Yes, exactly. You know, the point of Star Wars is that you move on with your lives.
It's my favorite quote ever.
That needs to go on a t-shirt, man.
All these like 60-year-old nerds.
I'm gonna play that. I'm gonna play that quote after the outro. And yeah. But so for all you listening at home, you stay tuned.
Very good lesson to Star Wars fans everywhere, I think. Yeah.
To not get, you know, obsessively into Star Wars, I guess, to the point where you forget about reality.
Well, no, I feel like go ahead, obsess about it, but you got to realize what it is. Like, it's like a space adventure for kids. Like,
Right. Yeah.
Because it's awesome, doesn't mean neglect other things.
Well, I mean, and the life lesson that you take from it, right? It's like Luke Skywalker. You move on with your life and do something with it, right? You don't just stay stick in that trench run kind of thing on that farm or whatever, right? So yeah, I think I love his real world kind of lesson there, as like the whole point of Luke's journey is that you move on with your life and that you don't just stuck doing the same thing all the time. So I think it's funny how he kind of throws that back at like just fans who are totally just stuck on Star Wars. Yeah. But I don't know.
The thing is, I would not be surprised if we find the writer of this article and he still spends all of his time writing Star Wars every day. That's all he does.
All right. So, okay. We got some listener mail in, and this one's from Shelly. Hey guys, I was listening last week when you were mentioning fans who were seeing Obi-Wan's mention of the Clone Wars in episode 4 back in 77 and what it meant to see the actual Clone Wars come to life in relation to Ben's comments. Watching Kenobi sit and reflect on the wars was very mysterious, as if it were some bizarre battle. And when you'd think about what a clone might be, it was kind of creepy. Why were clones fighting? You heard rumors back in the 70s that the stormtroopers were actually all clones, and it made you wonder, what did they look like under there? Were they faceless? So when the clones and the Clone Wars were actually revealed in episode 1, I think she means episode 2, it put some perspective on things. But seeing the clones being bred and trained and put into service was confusing as to why and how it would be a clone war until it's revealed that they would wind up serving the Republic and later the Empire. Pretty profound. May the Force be with you, Shelley. So thanks, Shelley, for sending in an email. And for anyone else listening, you can always shoot us an email at theescapepod@outlook.com or shoot us a tweet. But I love the flashback theory there to what people were thinking about the stormtroopers and all that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. I think that was maybe it's because it was after the original trilogy came out, but I seem to remember hearing that as a theory that lasted for a long time. Like, people all thought the stormtroopers were clones, and that's where you get the line, "Aren't you a little short for a stormtrooper?" Or else, why is there a standardized height for a stormtrooper?
Right.
Because now that we know they're not, that line doesn't actually make any sense.
Right. Yeah. That makes sense. Well,
that's interesting too.
It's a good point
about that. Like,
I never actually associated that with a standard of being a clone, but I always just took it as like a military regulation. But then again, that's like,
if you're too short, then you're kicked out of the military.
well, you know what? That also isn't crazy, because you did have to be a certain height to join certain militaries in World War II, right?
Okay.
And you did have to be a certain physical kind of specimen. They're not going to let some 5'2" asthmatic guy into the military.
Well, that's exactly Steve Rogers' problem. As Captain America, like, he's too short, he's asthmatic, he's got all these
scrawny
problems. Yeah. So, they can't let him in. But I just took it like that. It's like, oh, it's a restriction. You have to be a certain height. But I don't know. I never associated it with. It's an interesting theory. Like, it's like, oh yeah, all Clone Wars, all the clones have to be are the same height. So. But I don't know. I just thought her message was very interesting, pointing out some actual real world speculation on like back in the day, I don't know. It's just interesting to ask. So, anyone listening who has a parent that went and saw Star Wars back in 77, maybe ask them just like, hey, what did you think the Clone Wars was?
That'd be very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's cool that she kind of says that clones are something kind of like freaky, like, because that's the vibe I kind of get. Like if I were to put myself like kind of 40 years ago and someone was talking about clones, I wouldn't picture like
a regular human.
Like, I wouldn't picture like carbon copies of just like a human. It'd be like kind of freaky, like spooky. Like.
And she said faceless specifically, right? So maybe they're almost like an organic android.
Yeah, for sure. So I completely get kind of that vibe. I guess that's what I was kind of alluding to at the start when I was talking about like clones are more like sci-fi than I don't know, than anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're just kind of weird.
Yeah.
It's a good point, though.
Yeah, for sure.
Very cool.
Cool. Well, thanks again, Shelly. And guys, thanks so much for coming back on the show. Blake, Bryce, always welcome back. I guess we'll catch you on one of the next episodes of Star Wars Escape Pod.
Anytime.
Sounds good.
All right, thanks guys for coming back on the show. It's always great to have you. And for all of you guys tuning in to Star Wars Escape Pod, big thank you to you as well for just supporting the show. And if you haven't already, best way to help us out is to leave a 5-star review if you're using Apple Podcasts. And that's pretty much all I can ask for there, aside from sharing the show. So if you got a sec to tweet out a link to this episode or maybe one of your favorite episodes as a recommendation for a Star Wars podcast, post it in the Discord, whatever you're on some sort of Star Wars forum. It's a great way to help spread the word for Star Wars Escape Pod so that it can get out there and bring in some more traffic. And at the moment, this is a completely revenue-free, no-profit program. It's pretty much done from the heart of us Star Wars fans. So just a great way to bring more people in and get it out there. Getting it more discovered, I guess, is the right word I'm looking for. So if you do have a moment to do any of those things, that would be fantastic. So stay tuned for more great content. If you haven't subscribed already, please do that. And stay tuned to the very end. I got a little Mark Hamill audio clip that I grabbed off the internet to play you guys. So stay tuned in just a moment for that. If you haven't tuned in to Rebels Talk, an ongoing series with After Show with Diego talking about Star Wars Rebels, and our latest episode with Reed talked about Star Wars Squadrons, be sure to check that out as well. But until next time, guys, may the Force be with you, and we'll see you in the next one.
So loyal to George, and I owe him so much. He at one time said, would you consider playing an Obi-Wan type character handing Excalibur down to the next generation? I said, when would that be? And at the time he said around 2011. I thought, gee, as much as I'd like to have a job lined up at the turn of the century, I was figuring out how old I'd be at that point, and I thought, well, I don't know.